Yirmiyahu, or Jeremiah 26 through 29. In the beginning of the reign of Jehoiakim, the son of Yoshiyahu, the sovereign of Yehuda, this word came from Yehovah, saying, Thus said Yehovah, stand in the courtyard of the house of Yehovah and speak to all the cities of Yehuda, which come to bow themselves in the house of Yehovah. Speak all the words that I command you to speak to them. Do not diminish a word. If so be that they listen, and each turn from his evil way, then I shall repent of the evil that I plan to do to them, because of the evil of their deeds. And you shall say to them, Thus said Yehovah, if you do not listen to me to walk in my Torah, which I set before you, to listen to the words of my servants, the prophets I am sending you, even rising up early and sending them, though you've not listened, then I shall make this house like Shiloh, and make this city a curse to all the nations of the earth. And the priests and the prophets and all the people heard Yirmiyahu speaking all these words in the house of Yehovah. And it came to be, when Yirmiyahu had ended speaking all that Yehovah commanded him to speak to all the people, that the priests and the prophets and all the people seized him, saying, You shall certainly die. Why have you prophesied in the name of Yehovah, saying, This house shall be like Shiloh, and this city be dried up without an inhabitant? And all the people were gathered against Yirmiyahu in the house of Yehovah. And the heads of Yehuda heard this. And they came up from the sovereign's house to the house of Yehovah, and sat down in the entrance of the new gate of the house of Yehovah. And the priests and the prophets spoke to the heads and all the people, saying, A death sentence for this man, for he has prophesied against this city, as you've heard with your own ears. And Yirmiyahu spoke to all the heads and all the people, saying, Yehovah sent me to prophesy against this house and against this city with all the words that you heard. And now make good your ways and your deeds, and obey the voice of Yehovah your Elohim. Then Yehovah shall relent concerning the evil he's pronounced against you. And I'm in your hand. Do with me as seems good and right to you. But know for certain that if you put me to death, you're bringing innocent blood on yourselves and on this city and on its inhabitants, for truly Yehovah has sent me to you to speak all these words in your hearing. Then the heads and all the people said to the priests and the prophets, No death sentence for this man, for he's spoken to us in the name of Yehovah our Elohim. And some of the elders of the land rose up and spoke to all the assembly of the people, saying, Micaiah of Moresheth prophesied in the days of Hizkiyahu, the sovereign of Yehuda. And he spoke to all the peoples of Yehuda, saying, Thus said Yehovah of hosts, Zion shall become a plowed field, and Jerusalem be heaps, and the mountain of the house like the bare hills of the forest. Did Hizkiyahu, sovereign of Yehuda, and all Yehuda indeed put him to death? Did he not fear Yehovah and seek the favor of Yehovah? And the master relented concerning the evil which he had pronounced against them. But we are doing great evil against ourselves. There was, however, a man who prophesied in the name of Yehovah, Uriyahu, the son of Shemayahu of Kiriath Yearim, who prophesied against this city and against this land, according to all the words of Yirmiyahu. And when Jehoiakim the sovereign, with all his mighty men and all the heads, heard his words, the sovereign sought to put him to death, but Uriyahu heard of it and was afraid and fled and went to Mitzrayim. Then Jehoiakim the sovereign sent men to Mitzrayim. Elnathan, the son of Achbor, and some men who went with him to Mitzrayim. And they brought Uriyahu from Mitzrayim and brought him to Jehoiakim the sovereign, who struck him with the sword and threw his dead body into the burial sites of the common people. However, the hand of Ahikam, son of Shaphan, was with Yirmiyahu, so as not to give him into the hand of the people to put him to death. Chapter 27. In the beginning of the reign of Jehoiakim, son of Yoshiyahu, the sovereign of Yehuda, this word came from Yirmiyahu, from Yehovah, saying, "This is what Yehovah said to me, make for yourselves bands and yokes, then you shall put them on your neck, and shall send them to the sovereign of Edom, and the sovereign of Moab, and the sovereign of the Ammonites, and the sovereign of Tsor, and the sovereign of Sidon, by the hand of the messengers who come to Jerusalem, to Tzidkiyahu, the sovereign of Yehuda. And you shall command them to say to their masters, Thus said Yehovah of hosts, the Elohim of Israel, say this to your masters, I've made the earth, the man and the beast that are on the face of the earth, by my great power and by my outstretched arm. And I shall give it to whom seemed right in my eyes. And now I've given all these lands into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, the sovereign of Babel, my servant. And the beasts of the field I have also given him to serve him. And all the nations shall serve him and his son's son, until the time of his land comes. And then many nations and great sovereigns shall make him serve them. And it shall be that the nation and the reign that do not serve Nebuchadnezzar, the sovereign of Babel, and the one that does not put its neck under the yoke of the sovereign of Babel, that nation I shall punish, declares Yehovah, with the sword and with scarcity of food and the pestilence, until I've consumed them by his hand. So, do not listen to your prophets, or to your diviners, or to your dreamers, or to your observers of clouds, or your sorcerers who speak to you, saying, Do not serve the sovereign of Babel. For they're prophesying falsehood to you, to remove you far from your land, and I shall drive you out, and you shall perish. But the nations that bring their necks under the yoke of the sovereign of Babel and serve him, I shall leave in their own land, declares Yehovah, and they shall till it and dwell in it. And I spoke to Tzidkiah, the sovereign of Yehuda, according to all these words, saying, Bring your necks under the yoke of the sovereign of Babel and serve him and his people and live. Why should you die, you and your people, by the sword and by scarcity of food and by the pestilence, as Yehovah has spoken against the nation that does not serve the sovereign of Babel? Do not listen to the words of the prophets who speak to you, saying, Don't serve the sovereign of Babel, for they prophesy falsehood to you. For I have not sent them, declares Yehovah, yet they prophesied falsehood in my name, in order that I drive you out. Then you shall perish, you and the prophets who prophesy to you. Then spoke to the priests and to all his people, saying, Thus said Yehovah, Do not listen to the words of your prophets who are prophesying to you, saying, See, the vessels of the house of Yehovah are brought back from Babel soon, now, for they prophesy falsehood to you. Do not listen to them. Serve the sovereign of Babel and live. Why should the city become a ruin? But if they are prophets, and if the word of Yehovah is with them, let them now make intercession to Yehovah of hosts, that the vessels which are left in the house of Yehovah and in the house of the sovereign of Yehuda and at Jerusalem shall not go to Babel. For thus said Yehovah of hosts concerning the columns, and concerning the sea, and concerning the stands, and concerning the remainder of the vessels which are left in the city, which Nebuchadnezzar, the sovereign of Babel, did not take when he exiled Jeconiah, the son of Jehoiakim, the sovereign of Yehuda, from Jerusalem to Babel, and all the nobles of Yehuda and Jerusalem. Thus said Yehovah of hosts, the Elohim of Israel, concerning the vessels that remain in the house of Yehovah, and in the house of the sovereign of Yehuda and of Jerusalem. They shall be brought to Babel, and be there until the day that I visit them, declares Yehovah. Then I shall bring them back and restore them to this place. Chapter 28. And it came to be in that year, at the beginning of the reign of Tzidkiah, sovereign of Yehuda, in that 4th year, and in the 5th new moon, that Hananiah, son of Azor the prophet, who was from Gabon, spoke to me in the house of Yehovah, in the presence of the priests and all the people, saying, Thus spoke Yehovah of hosts, the Elohim of Israel, saying, I've broken the yoke of the sovereign of Babel. Within 2 years I'm going to bring back to this place all the vessels of the house of Yehovah that Nebuchadnezzar, sovereign of Babel, removed from this place and took to Babel. And I'm going to bring back to this place Jeconiah, son of Jehoiakim, sovereign of Yehuda, with all the exiles of Yehuda who went to Babel, declares Yehovah, for I'm going to break the yoke of the sovereign of Babel. Then the prophet Yirmiyahu spoke to the prophet Hananiah in the presence of the priests and in the presence of all the people who stood in the house of Yehovah. And the prophet Yirmiyahu said, Amen. Yehovah, do so. Yehovah, establish your words which you've prophesied to bring back the vessels of the house of Yehovah and all the exiles from Babel to this place. Only, now hear this word that I speak in your hearing and in the hearing of all the people. The prophets who have been before me and before you of old prophesied against many lands and great reigns of battle, of evil and pestilence. The prophet who prophesies of peace, when the word of the prophet comes to pass, that prophet is known as the one whom Yehovah has truly sent. And Hananiah the prophet took the yoke off the prophet Yirmiyahu's neck and broke it. And Hananiah spoke in the presence of all the people, saying, Thus said Yehovah, so I shall break the yoke of Nebuchadnezzar, sovereign of Babel, from the neck of all the nations within 2 years. And the prophet Yirmiyahu went his way, and the word of Yehovah came to Yirmiyahu. After Hananiah the prophet had broken the yoke from the neck of the prophet Yirmiyahu, saying, Go and speak to Hananiah, saying, Thus said Yehovah, you've broken the yokes of wood, but you shall make yokes of iron instead. For thus said Yehovah of hosts, the Elohim of Israel, I've put a yoke of iron on the neck of all these nations to serve Nebuchadnezzar, sovereign of Babel, and they shall serve him. And I have also given him the beasts of the field. And the prophet Yirmiyahu said to Hananiah the prophet, Listen, please, Hananiah, Yehovah has not sent you, but you've made this people trust in falsehood. Therefore, thus said Yehovah, see, I'm sending you away from the face of the earth. This year you shall die, for you've spoken apostasy against Yehovah. And Hananiah the prophet died the same year in the 7th new moon. Chapter 29. And these are the words of the letter which Jeremiah the prophet sent from Jerusalem to the rest of the elders of the exile, and to the priests, and to the prophets, and to all the people whom Nebuchadnezzar had exiled from Jerusalem to Babel. After Jeconiah the sovereign, and the sovereigness mother, and the eunuchs, and the heads of Yehuda and Jerusalem, and the craftsmen, and the smiths had gone into exile from Jerusalem by the hand of El-Asah, son of Shaphan, and Gemariah, the son of Hilkiah, whom Tzidkiah, sovereign of Yehuda, sent to Babel, to Nebuchadnezzar, the sovereign of Babel, saying, thus said Yehovah of hosts, Elohim of Israel, to all the exiles whom I exiled from Jerusalem to Babel, build houses and dwell in them, plant gardens and eat their fruit, take wives and bring forth sons and daughters, and take wives for your sons and give your daughters to husbands, and let them bear sons and daughters, and be increased there, not diminished. And seek the peace of the city where I have exiled you, and pray to Yehovah for it, for in its peace you have peace. For thus said Yehovah of hosts, Elohim of Israel, let not your prophets and your diviners who are in your midst deceive you, neither listen to the dreams which you're dreaming, for they're prophesying falsely to you in my name. I've not sent them, declares Yehovah. For thus said Yehovah, when 70 years are completed at Babel, I shall visit you and establish my good word toward you to bring you back to this place. For I know the plans I'm planning for you, declares Yehovah, plans of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and an expectancy. Then you shall call on me and listen and come and pray to me, and I shall listen to you. And you shall seek me and shall find me when you search for me with all your heart. And I shall be found by you, declares Yehovah, and I shall turn back your captivity, and shall gather you from all the nations, and from all the places where I have driven you, declares Yehovah. And I shall bring you back to the place from which I've exiled you, because you've said, Yehovah has raised up prophets for us in Babel. Thus said Yehovah concerning the sovereign who sits on the throne of David, concerning all the people who dwell in this city, and concerning your brothers who've not gone out with you into exile. Thus said Yehovah of hosts, see, I'm sending on them the sword, the scarcity of food, and the pestilence, and I shall make them like spoiled figs, so spoiled as to be uneatable. And I shall pursue them with the sword, with scarcity of food, and with pestilence. And I shall make them a horror among all the reigns of the earth, to be a curse and an astonishment and a hissing and a reproach among all the nations where I've driven them. For they did not heed my words, declares Yehovah, which I sent them by my servants the prophets, rising up early and sending them. Yet you did not listen, declares Yehovah. You, therefore, Hear the word of Yehovah, all you exiles, whom I've sent from Jerusalem to Babel. Thus said Yehovah of hosts, the Elohim of Israel, concerning Ahab, son of Koliah, and Tzidkiyahu, son of Maaseiah, who are prophesying falsely to you in my name. See, I'm giving them into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, sovereign of Babel, and he shall strike them before your eyes. And because of them, all the exiles of Yehudah who are in Babel shall use a curse, saying, Yehovah make you like Tzidkiyahu and Ahab, whom the sovereign of Babel roasted in the fire. Because they've done wickedness in Israel and committed adultery with their neighbors' wives, and have spoken a word in my name falsely, which I've not commanded them. And I am he who knows, and a witness, declares Yehovah. And speak to Shemayahu, the Nehelamite, saying, Thus speaks Yehovah of hosts, the Elohim of Israel, saying, Because you've sent letters in your name to all the people who are at Jerusalem, to Zephaniah, son of Maaseiah the priest, and to all the priests, saying, Yehovah has made you priest instead of Jehoiada the priest, so that there are overseers in the house of Yehovah over everyone who is mad and makes himself a prophet, that you should put him in the stocks and in the iron collar. So why have you not reproved Yirmiyahu of Anathoth, who makes himself a prophet to you? For he has sent us in Babel, saying, This captivity is long. Build houses and dwell in them, and plant gardens and eat their fruit. And Zephaniah the priest read this letter in the hearing of Yirmiyahu the prophet. Then the word of Yehovah came to Yirmiyahu, saying, Send to all those in exile, saying, Thus said Yehovah, concerning Shemaiah the Nehelamite. Because Shemaiah has prophesied to you, and I have not sent him, and he's made you to trust on falsehood, therefore thus said Yehovah, See, I'm bringing punishment upon Shemaiah the Nehelamite and his seed, and he shall have no one to dwell among his people, nor is he to see the good that I'm about to do for my people, declares Yehovah, because he's spoken apostasy against Yehovah.